Hello there, and welcome back to Lab 2. We're going to look at video 2 now, which is going to be extended access list. We've already covered, I think, standard access list now, so I feel comfortable that we can move on a notch from there. Excuse me. Okay, so the second video, the second task, says we need to restrict access to the web server located in Toronto office to access from the Vancouver employee network only. Please use an extended access list for this and restrict access to ports 80 and 443, which are the common web ports. The web server IP is 192.168.0.253, also named the access list web. This particular web server does not actually exist except in my imagination. We do have a loopback address for this network, so we just have to assume that this server is there in this instance. And I'm going to show you how to actually set up the access list and also apply the access list, which we didn't do in the previous video actually. In this video we're actually going to apply the access list to the interface to actually make it do something. So let's bring up GNS3, open a console. Our console password once again. Okay, so this time we're going to create, it's the same command at first, IP access list, but instead of standard, what we're going to do is choose extended. Now we can usually choose a number or we can choose a word. In this instance it was asked that we choose a name for the actual access list. So we'll call it web. And if we hit the question mark, you can see similar options to what we've seen previously. So we're going to do permit and question mark, but this time when we hit question mark we get a lot more options than we got previously. So in this instance we want to restrict access to an IP but also to specified ports. So what we would do, the option that we would pick for this would be TCP, because port 80 and port 443 on a web server run via the TCP protocol. Question mark, and the source address, we want to lock it down to 192.168. Did we say from Calgary or Vancouver? Let's check. Vancouver, okay. So that's 192.168.2.0. And we want to hit the wildcard match, so match 192, match 168, match 2, and don't care about the rest. Okay, and we want to do equals. And we could do www, you can see that's already been defined in this list, or you can just quite simply enter the ports, which is what I'll be doing. See what else we can find in here that we need to do. That should do the trick. So we've specified, in fact we need to do the actual to address as well. So the destination address, which was 192.168.0.253. And we'll match all in this case. So match 192, match 168, match 0, match 253. And that, we don't need to do any logging or anything like that. Press enter. Now there's always an explicit denial at the end of any access list. It's a default which is always there. I think I mentioned that previously. In this case we'll actually add it anyway. So if we go back, in fact we'll write it from the beginning again. So we'll do deny TCP from any source with the destination, with the port equaling 80 and 443 to the destination address 192.168.0.253. Again, we'll match all to make sure it's just that one IP address we're blocking, and in this case we'll do some logging as well. We'll log the entries. So if we move out back into enable mode and do a show IP access list. And this time we can put the name web, that's what we call the access list. And you'll see the two entries there. So the first is permit any TCP packet from this network on ports, well it says www, but it's actually port 80, port 443, going to the host 192.168.0.253, and then deny any traffic TCP again from any other source equaling port 80 and port 443 to that host, the same host, and log it. We actually need we need to put an additional entry in there because it is an explicit deny all at the end. It's invisible, but it's there, and that could potentially block other traffic in future. So what we're going to do is go back into the IP access list, extended, and the name is web, and we're going to add a permit at the end here, and we'll just do let's see, we'll do permit IP where the source host is any and the destination address is any. And then when we take a look again at the access list, we have now 3 entries. So the initial allow of web traffic to this host here from this subnet, then a deny to this host from anywhere else on these 2 ports, and then a global permit any to any, basically. That means when we apply the actual access list to the interface, if we hadn't have done that final permit, then essentially what would have happened is it would have blocked other traffic that we may want to actually go through that particular interface. So if we go to the interface now, fast Ethernet 1/0, and this is how we actually apply. So it's access, one second, IP access, group, there we go, hit question mark, and the access list name is web. Oops. And in, because the packets are inbound, so they're coming from another network into the Toronto router, so we want to block in. And that access list has now been applied to fast Ethernet 1/0. So anything that tries to access that web server coming through that particular interface, if it's not on the Calgary network, which we defined in the access list, the Vancouver network, which we defined on the access list previously, then it's going to be dropped. But any other protocol that's not equal to port 80 or 443 to this particular host will be allowed in its current state. We can always add further rules in there just by adding the sequence command if need be. Okay, so hopefully that cleared some things up for you. Any questions, give me a shout, but that's a pretty much an overhaul of both standard and extended access lists. They're fairly easy to get your head around once you've done 1 or 2 of them. Really simple, and you can apply them in all kinds of different situations, whether it be routing protocols, whether it be, which we haven't touched yet, whether it be things like you've just seen there, blocking web traffic to specific servers, or Telnet or SSH or any of these kind of things. You can apply an access list to almost anything on a Cisco router. So any questions, give me a shout. That's access list done.